All right, so now that we've added the middleware to our socket IO events and connections, the next thing that I want to take a look at here is how we should be handling these errors on the front end, right? Because currently what we're doing, if we take a look at any of our pieces of middleware, let's just open up any of them. Okay, we'll open up our user owns note middleware, for example. What we're doing is we're emitting this error event with an error message, but we're not really doing anything about it, right? So what we're going to need to do on the front end is decide how we want to handle these things. So what we're going to do, let's open up our note detail page, since that's the only part of our front end right now that's actually creating a socket connection. And we've already added an error event to our socket.on here, right? We've already said socket.on error, blah, blah, blah. And right now we're just logging that out to the console. So what we're going to do instead, though, and this is just one possible way of doing it. There are many other possible ways as well, depending on your circumstances. But what I'm going to suggest we do is have an error state variable, similar to what we've done in the past with things like forms or loading data. And basically, if an error occurs, we'll set that error remember variable and use that to display some kind of error on the screen for the user. All right, so what that's going to look like, we're going to go up to the top here, and we can put this anywhere we want, really. I'm just going to put it right here. We'll say const error and set error. And what this is going to be, the error is just going to be a string explaining what happened, right? This is what we'll display to the user if an error does occur. So we're going to say equals use state, and the initial value of that will be an empty string. So the next thing that we're going to do then, now that we have this error, is we're going to go down here into the socket.on, and when we receive an error message from the server, right, if something goes wrong, we're going to say set error to error message. Okay, and now all that's left is really to just display that error message somewhere in our JSX. So let's go down here to where we're returning some things, and I'm actually going to put this above is not found here. We'll just say if is error, or if error, even more simply. We're just going to say return, and we'll display some kind of error message. We're just going to say error, and we'll display the actual error message underneath that. Cool. So that's what'll happen if an error occurs. We're also going to want to set is loading to false in that case. So we'll say is loading false. All right, just in case that error occurs when we're initially loading the note data. So here's what that'll look like. Let's go back to our browser, and in one of these, we're going to open up a note that the other user can't access, right? So my secret note isn't shared with any users, right? We can see that it's not shared with anybody. So if we open that up, and if we try and go to that same URL in our other browser here, oops, it looks like I used the wrong thing for is loading. That should be set is loading, so let's go back to there. Set is loading false. I'm not sure what possessed me to just say is loading, but whatever. And it looks like is loading just has to do with the note's context, so we don't actually even need to worry about that. Sorry for the confusion there, so let's just remove that, and everything hopefully should work fine without it. And sure enough, we'll see error user does not have read permission displayed inside here when the user tries to see a note that they don't have access to. So let's just add a little bit of styling to this to make it a little nicer. What we're going to do is we'll just open up our index.css, and let's see if I don't... Oh, I already have an error style for this, so we'll just add this to that error div that we just created, or that error paragraph tag more accurately. And what we're going to do is just say class name equals error. Okay, and what that'll do, that'll render this inside a nice reddish pinkish box here and let the user know that they don't have the permission necessary to see the note. Awesome, so that's one way we could handle the errors. Another way to handle the errors would be simply to redirect the user to some kind of generic error page if something like this happens. And the way that that would happen is instead of displaying an error message, and don't feel like you have to delete this, you can always just leave this if this is your preferred way of doing things. But the way that we would redirect the user to a generic error page might be something like this. We would probably say history.push, and let's see if I have history in here already. Yep, sure enough, history use history. Basically what we would do is we would set up an error page at some kind of route like /error. And this error page would probably take some kind of query parameter that would specify the message that should be displayed here. All right, so all we would have to do in that case is just convert this into backticks like that. And we would say something like message equals, and then we would say encode URI component, and we would just pass that error message through there. Okay, so what we would have to do after that, of course, is actually create that error page. Okay, so what we would do here is inside our pages, we're going to create a new file called errorpage.js. And what this is going to look like, we're just going to say export const error page equals, and this is going to, first of all, have to access the query parameters inside of here. And what that's going to look like, we're just going to say const query params equals URL search params, and we're going to say window.location.search, right? This is just how we get query parameters inside React. So don't worry too much about the details. This is just basic vanilla JavaScript stuff. And then we're just going to say const message, and that's going to be equal to query params.get message. Okay, so that'll get the message query parameter for us. And once we have those things, we're just going to display some JSX on the page. And what that's going to look like, we're just going to have a big H1 heading that'll say something like, uh-oh, an error occurred. And then down here is where we're going to display the message. So we'll say something like error, and then we'll display the error message there. Okay, so let's just wrap this up in React fragments here. And in fact, we can actually just say something like div class name equals error, and that will apply the error styling to this entire div. That might be ugly, but let's just give it a try. Okay, so we have our error page. Let's just display that inside our routes. We're going to open up our routes component here, and down here somewhere, right, probably right by where we have our landing pages, that kind of stuff, we'll just display route. The path here is going to be /error, as we saw. And inside here, we're going to display our error page, which apparently I'm going to have to import manually, since my auto import apparently isn't working in my IDE today. So let's import that up here. What we're going to do is say import error page from pages error page. There we go, that one worked. And let's give that one a try. So we're going to go back to here, and oops, it looks like I forgot something there. That should be new URL params inside error page. So we'll say equals new URL search params. And there we go. We see, uh-oh, an error occurred. Error user does not have read permission. Doesn't look the best, and I think that's a little bit better than just displaying a simple error message on the page that they're not supposed to be on anyway. So anyway, we've seen two different ways to handle errors that occur when connecting to sockets. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.